like to welcome everyone to the this 19R8 release webinar. We started these release webinars, I think, 2 years ago, and it's been a really great way for us to pause, take a moment, and celebrate, discuss the work that 40 has been doing in creating these quarterly releases. So, as you know, this is the last 19 release, the last release of 19, of a feature release of 19, and then we're going to R. So it's pretty cool. We're turning the page pretty soon, so we're looking forward to it. With me today, presenting these topics and making sure that everything I say makes sense and helping me answer any really difficult questions is the Director of Technical Services at Komoncharoensiri. And myself, my name is Will Taylor. I am the Technical Account Manager at 4D. And yeah, look forward to kind of taking a little deep dive. So without further ado, let's get started. We start this webinar with the news for developers. In other words, news that makes your life easier as a developer. Helps you develop things faster, better, cleaner, all of those things. So, and I would like to start the webinar with the most advanced topic in the R9, in the 19R8 release. And this is the managing user permissions with ORDA. Now, 4D already allows you to expose or not a data class and some of its attributes as a REST resources. This is done in the structure editor. And this is a really convenient and quick way to restrict access to specific pieces of data in your table structure. Now, 19R8 goes further by providing a powerful and fully customizable system to protect your data from unauthorized users. The system for protecting your data depends on who is accessing it and what they're accessing. Now, this new feature is based on ORDA concepts and scalable web sessions. It covers all web processes, such as REST requests, requests received on remote data stores, and web processes like 4D actions and 4D tags. To be a little bit, make sure I'm clear here, this mechanism covers only web access. Only web access. Your desktop applications and the way you manage your data your desktop applications and the way you access your data with your web applications remains unchanged. Now, when it comes to web applications, a recurring difficulty is that malicious people can try to bypass your user interface, especially hitting your REST interface. And by parsing through your API, they can try to access fields that you don't necessarily want them to have. So this is why we're offering now this very low-level protection. And the privileges are carried out by the session object offered by the scalable web session. This object persists for the life of the web session, and each browser or connection has its own session object. And when you authenticate a user, you need to indicate in the session what their role is for. For example, administrator or just a simple user can have different permissions and different accesses. And this is easy to do thanks to the set privileges function of the session object, as you can see on the in the documentation in the presentation. Now, these roles, privileges, and permissions are different from the usual 4D groups. They are simply defined in a JSON file in your project folder, where you can describe all the protection rules you want, from the data store to specific data class attributes. It is therefore a very powerful feature with which you can control very finely the access to your data. And I recommend you read the dedicated blog post and the documentation, and then you should have everything you need to know about this feature. So, and I guess taking a step back, if you do not have any roles defined for your application, it assumes that everybody, for example, on the REST interface, is able to see everything that's exposed to the REST interface. So everybody comes in as a guest user, and that guest user has access to everything that's exposed to the REST interface, for example. So if you're using REST, I would definitely look into this with 4019 R8. Cool. Now, do you know a developer who does not work with list boxes? Well, it's the easiest and most common way to display data in a 4D application. Now, automatic row height was already possible for table-based list boxes, allowing them to be allowing the cells to automatically the rows to automatically adjust based on the content that was in the rows. And now 19R8 has extended this feature to offer that of the automatic row height adjustment to list box based on collections and entity selections. Now, in this example on screen, you can see that the height of the rows adapts well to the content in their cells, and also to the font size, depending if you change it. So here you have the control with the ability to set the minimum and maximum heights as well. So and as you can see, it's a super simple, if you read the blog, you'll see that it's really simple and incredibly, it's simple to implement. So have fun. So let's move on to error handling now. 4019 R8 brings new possibilities to error handling. Now you can define a global error handler that will be effective for all execution contexts, like processes, workers, or to computed attributes, or to functions, what have you. This way, if you do not define a local error handler in a new process or worker, the global error handler will be invoked automatically if an error is received in the app, if an error happens in the application. This means that there are no more error dialogues displayed on the server and no more uncaught errors. This feature really simplifies your life. You no longer run the risk of missing an error that your application runs into by having forgotten to load the error handler around the code. And you can always keep your current error handlers. Don't worry, we're not changing that feature. The current error handlers will take precedence from the global ones. So if you have a local error handler, if you have a global error handler and a local error handler, the local error handler will take precedence, the code will run. So very cool. And I mean, love it or hate it, email is the primary means of communication in business. And Microsoft 365 is a leader that can't be ignored. Now, in integrating Microsoft 365 for receiving, sending, and processing email into an enterprise application could be a major selling point for your solution. It could be the difference between your application and other applications on the market. Now, as you may already know, 40 Netkit is an integrated component from 4D that allows you to interact with third-party web services and their APIs, like Microsoft Graph. And with 19R8, we added new commands to this component that allow you to manage your emails via the Microsoft Graph API. Commands for receiving emails, listing the folders, moving the emails from one folder to another, replying to an email and creating a conversation, creating a draft email and saving it to a folder of your choice, and also deleting an email. Now, to learn more about this very broad topic, I invite you to check out the blog. It's quite a vast topic and can be a great thing for your application. And you may ask yourself, hey, I could always do this with IMAP and POP3. Why do I need to use the Microsoft Graph API? Well, Ad and I asked ourselves the same question. And after a quick look on Google, we saw that the Microsoft Graph API IMAP and POP3 are currently deprecated for Microsoft. So this is the way to integrate with Microsoft applications in the future. And these mail access features are just the tip of the iceberg of what can be done with the Microsoft 365 Graph API and Netkit. So have a look if you're interested. Now, for some time now, 4D has allowed you to deliver Windows applications in SDI mode. This is a great feature that was added a few years back in 16R4. The small problem was that until version 19R8, testing these applications was a little bit cumbersome because you always had to build first and then test the built application. And in case you're making frequent changes to your UI, this was quite tedious. Well, with 19R8, testing an SDI application is now a breeze. You can view your application without having to generate it. Just select the test application in the SDI mode. In order for you to access that, you have to have the button clicked in the settings for your application to be in SDI mode, and then you can test it right there. Super awesome. So super simple feature, but we hope that it makes your life much easier. Now, 4D has improved support for external code source editors like Microsoft or like Visual Studio Code, allowing for developers to manage 4D code and provide them with standard features such as syntax highlighting, go-to definition, and signature help. With 19R8, 4D brings some new features to Visual Studio's code: code completion, 4D commands, object attributes, object functions, methods, variables, and contexts and types. Wow. All of this is now covered by code completion in Visual Studio. Now, you may be asking yourself, why are we doing this? And what we're actually doing inside 4D is we are modernizing the 4D method editor one way that we're doing that is we're implementing a protocol called LSP. And so what this means is that 4D becomes kind of a language server that is then able to be queried by VS Code. And as we are modernizing the 4D editor and implementing slowly but surely these features in the LSP protocol, these integrations with source code editors like VS Code are direct results from this work. So, and also VS Code exists on Windows, Mac, and Linux, so it exists everywhere. And if you recruit a new developer, whatever their language of expertise is, there is a strong chance that they're currently well-versed in VS Code and prefer to work in that environment. And also, we know that our developers use VS Code with 4D quite a bit. It's not the majority, but for developers that work across many different technologies like PHP, Perl, JSON, XML, or HTML, CSS, they may want to have all of their code in one location. That way they can make sure they can make code changes here without going to the method editor right away, especially when they're in project mode. So it's very cool modernizations in the 4D method editor. Now, with the introduction of project mode, it's quite easy to I guess, build parts of your projects. In the latest version of 4D, we added several features that allow you to create your own build chain that is adapted to your team, your working methods, and your needs. To help create your own build chain or to integrate 4D in a continuous integration tool, we have developed a component called Build 4D, which is available open source on GitHub. For this first step, Build 4D allows you to create a compiled structure and a compiled component. So we will continue to add features to the Build 4D component And soon you'll be able to manage single user applications or even server applications. And I'd like to just quickly take a moment and remind you that the 4D Git repository is chock full of examples, and it's really worth your while looking into it. I look into it quite a bit when I need when someone points something and there's a lot of things, add delivers things, and all of that, how do's are there. So, and the reason for putting a component like this on GitHub is so that you can take it and adapt it to your needs and to your organization, whether it be a big or small one. For example, one way to take this is when say you're a developer and you modify some code and you want to commit that code to Git, but you forgot to do a syntax check and you made a typo. Well, an idea is that a Git runner starts to do a syntax check to avoid mistakes, the mistake of the typo entering the repository. So pretty much your check-in gets rejected because there's a typo automatically. That's why we created the commands like compile project so that they can be run automatically in this way. Or maybe you want to trigger a build once a day at night, for example, at midnight, for some automated testing, and then make that build available for somewhere for your customers or beta testers to pick up. That's actually the way we work in 4D. Every night we produce a build of each branch of 4D in Git, and automatic tests are triggered to run against those builds. And then in the morning, when we show up and someone says, grab the latest version of 4D, we just need to drag it from one location and pull it from our computer. It's really a cool way to work and for us to be able to test things out when we need to get the latest and greatest. So again, this is just the first step. Soon you'll be able to include your license numbers with the volume desktop, change the icons for Windows. So stay tuned. And if this is very interesting for modern code DevOps, modern code deployment and DevOps teams. So any other questions? Here we go. Will the build handle signing of the application?
That's a very good question, because the build process is always, it's the final step where you can actually doing the signing of the application. I do not have an answer to that, which is something that I will have to get back to you.
Good question. I think it's doubtful because it's all of the processes that need to be done. But I guess you could, knowing what we know about the current process of signing an application in the tech notes that Eric Louie has made, I think it's a manual process that happens after the build of the application. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ad. And then it would just be taken from there. So built application, and then you need to put the application through the signing process.
There's a different part of signing inside of 4D build dialog itself allows you to sign any application or even components that you are building. So I don't want to guess, but I can imagine that process may be included in this build components already.
4D View Pro and 4D Write Pro news. Now, tables are an essential part of a 4D View Pro document. That's why we've made advances with tables in the previous version. And 4D V19 R8 adds a new feature that allows you to customize the look of your tables so that they blend with the rest of your document. Now, the VP set table command offers you the ability to programmatically apply one of over 60 predefined table styles. And if none of these fit your needs, you can always make your own, create a style, and then apply it as necessary to your table. So in the example on screen, you can see, we have what's it called? An editor for these styles. All right, you can make some wild and wacky styles. These aren't probably the ones you would use in your application. It's just something that you can see. But as you can see, we're creating these styles and we are applying those themes directly into the 40 View Pro area with the VP set table command. So now you have full control over So now you have full control over the setting and the way that your tables look with, like, for example, and what your customers need for fonts, background colors, lines, font size, etc. So hopefully you can create more beautiful reports than what I've done here in this quick demo. And let's move on to 40 View Pro to an even more striking feature. The floating based text boxes of 40 View Pro. This is another stone in the building of 40 View Pro as an advanced template-based document generator. Now, we've said it over and over in previous sessions, 40 Write Pro is much more than a word processor. It's our document generating machine engine. Think here about how we want to create a document with a field, the customer's address, or with a special image for the customer, or promotional image or desktop, anything that you want to just add into any sort of text box that you like to add into your document. Now, this was always possible with 40 Write Pro, but you would encounter difficulties to position the text in the right spot of the document. Now, with 4019 R8, it is very easy thanks to this new idea, text boxes. A text box is a floating text box of any size that contains text, images, or even tables. And they can be used in a variety of different ways. If we have a look at this example on screen, we are using a text box whose dimensions can be defined by you or the end user, and this area contains an address. Now, we insert this zone in the document anywhere we want. For example, in the US, we would want to have the address on the left side, whereas in France, you'd want to have it on the right side. So different people have different needs based on their location and where they're sending their mail. So it's a very easy and simple way for you to make sure that your end document is appropriate for who is going to be receiving it. I'm sure you have a dozen use cases for this feature, and remember that even though we call it a text box or text area, it can actually contain a table, an image, or anything else a 40 Write Pro document can produce. And of course, you can have multiple text boxes on the same page. So you're not limited to just one. So I'd like to take a moment to say we're back. The 40 summits are back live and together in Atlanta and Paris. And I would like to personally invite you to come join us for this amazing event to be held in Atlanta at the lovely Emory Conference Center. This is our first time back together since the pandemic, and we've been missing you, and we chose a place where we could spend 2 full days all together to get the most out of the experience. You may even say that we are all going to be sheltering in place with V20. So, and for planning, we're planning the following for this event: 6 master classes, between 75 to 90 minutes, covering 7 major topics, which ends up to being over 8.5 hours of master classes. Time to meet and discuss with 40 team and your friends and enemies in the 40 developer community. I'm kidding. we're all friends, and one amazing party. So registration is open, so don't miss out on the early bird special. And the agenda is now on the website, and keep on checking back. We're going to be sending more information as we get closer to the event, and we're all super excited for it. And I get a lot of, this is when there's a new release of 4D, this is where I go, the 4D blog. I get a lot of all of the information that I get starts from there, and then I start to play and work and start to dig in, and then that way I can learn and I can work and present them as we go. So I invite you to read the blog often and stay up to date on it, because it is a invaluable resource with tons of how to whys. It doesn't just talk about the feature. It doesn't just describe the feature. It talks about how you can use it, and kind of more or less gives you the reason why we thought it was important to put it into the 4D product.
So there was one question we answered through chat, but I'll repeat it anyway. Will the speakers at the summit in Paris be in English? We are doing both English and French. So there'll be 2 tracks happening for the master classes.
Yeah. So for example, all of the classes that will be in English, all of the classes that we'll do in English in the US, there'll be 2 tracks in France running in parallel, French speaking track and English speaking track. So
Okay.
it's a great question though.
So this question, is it possible to create a text box that locks into a cell of 4D Pro? I know this is going to be a kind of a silly answer, but the cell itself, if you want that, to contain a text, it's already a text box inside of it. It's the matter of the format. But the actual text box in 4D View Pro, there's, for example, if you use something like charting and stuff like that, I think it's already available as a floating, text box, which is this is something new that we added to 4D Write Pro. It's a free flow text box that you can move in anywhere. But in 4D View Pro, when you think of a text that you want to log into a cell itself, the cell itself is already a text box, so I'm not sure if it adds any value, but I don't think a text box in 4D View Pro can be locked into a particular cell. At least that's from what I have experienced. I'm not sure. I can look into check with the team member to see if there's any different answer to that. Okay.
Oh, he's saying, think of a Kanban board using 4D View Pro columns to move them. So drag and drop from one column to the next. Is that what's being asked? I think you can do that, like you can do it in Excel. Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll look into that for more information, and we'll get back. Okay.
In questions, I guess more complicated development questions. If you want to just, I would recommend going to discuss.40.com and asking the question. That way we can, the community can kind of, because we can all have our different opinions about what we need to understand what exactly you're doing, and I think you can describe it. And then there can be discussion on 4D, discuss.40.com. That's a good location for that sort of kind of implementation thing, and to see what the best way forward, and if 40 View Pro makes sense for this or not, based on your needs and your requirements. Excellent. If there's no other questions, I guess we'll close it. I want to say thank you all for joining us in this last 19 feature release, version 19 feature release, and we look forward to seeing you in about 2 months or so for the V20 feature release webinar. So take care, y'all. Have a great rest of your week, and don't forget to sign up, register for the summit, and can't wait to be together there too as well. All right.